Okay, so next up is Joachim talking about making stuff shiny on the iPhone.
So last summer I decided to have a play with some iPhone stuff. There's quite a lot of new things to learn, Objective-C, Xcode, all of that crap. But the main new thing was actually having a UI, actually using graphics cards. It's not cards, packages. So the three I looked at in that time were UIImage, CoreAnimation and OpenGL. UIImage, what I came to first, was great as a starter. It's really simple, you can create any image from file, do whatever you want with it. However, it is really, really basic. You have your set image, and that's all you can do with it. And after you've initialized them, they're immutable, they're not really meant for animation, and, well, the animation hack that I did runs in the main loop, so it kind of slows everything down, which is not great. Here is some code using UIImage. As you can see, you just initialize the image, initialize it into a view, define the frame using coordinates, and then how big it is, and then you can just add it. And with the iPhone, obviously, you can have your input as a touch is the main input, and you can just move it to there. The hack I used to make it actually animate was to create a timer. Now this has a link, it links with itself, and then it calls this function update game. This frame interval makes it call it, I think, 60 times a second, or just however many times it can in a second, and then that adds it to the current run loop, which is obviously unideal. But once that happens, you can very, very easily, very simply add, well, to animate. So for example, here's a small brick breaker game, which is great, to be honest. I've spent hours playing this. Days. But most importantly, so I've not really done any particularly difficult code, nothing here, but you have this beautiful UI, you have this game, and that's all you need. And buttons and everything, it's just great. And that's as far as I got with UIImage, because then I decided I wanted to do something better. So then I started looking at CoreAnimation. This is still really simple, it's made for animation, which is fun, but the main premise is there's no specific code needed for animation, so you give it a start point and end point, and then it handles the interpolation between them, whether you want it to rotate, just transform, anything like that. The only problem is it's still really basic, so you're stuck with 2D, you can't really do anything with light, and you can't really extend it particularly far beyond the images. So here's a bit of code that I cut most of it out of so it could fit here. But you can just create this layer of the orbit. This is for an orbiting output. So you create the orbit, the planet, you can add these to the sublayer and then create an animation which is a rotation. Just add these together, add it to the layer, and it'll be there. You can then add more orbits to the orbits and orbits to the orbits, and this is very simple code, and it creates this, which is obviously simple, but really cool, I think. And I could watch that all day. And yeah, but that's great. So you don't have to fuck around with the timer, you don't have to fuck around with each individual iteration of the step, you just tell it where to go, and it will do that. The other beautiful thing about this I found very recently is that you can create any line and tell it to follow that line. So here we have a car going around a beautifully drawn racetrack, which with UIImage, obviously you can't do rotations, you can't make it follow those paths particularly easily, so that's wonderful. After all of that, I started looking at OpenGL, which is also when I very quickly stopped looking at OpenGL, because it's a fucker. So the pros are it's really powerful, and you can honestly do whatever you want with it, seemingly. It's what's used in most gaming at the moment, most high-end graphics will use OpenGL, but it's very much not for the faint-hearted. Also, if anyone knows any steps I can do between UIImage and CoreAnimation before OpenGL, I would love to look into that. So, let's try and draw a square with OpenGL. This is the Wikipedia example. First, you need to clear the buffer, get rid of everything on the screen so it's clear. I feel that's a stupid step, like, don't go backwards. Then, you need to initialize the projection matrix, as you would assume, and make it a simple square. I don't particularly understand what any of this is doing, but you need to do it, otherwise it will break. Then you need to initialize the model view matrix, which I think is what actually prints onto the screen, and then you finally just initiate the square. You do the color, you do every vertex, and this creates a green square in the XY plane. Unfortunately, when I tried to run this, a few minutes before coming here, it did not build, so I couldn't show you this work. But if you're interested, come and find me in a few days, and maybe I'll be somewhere. Luckily, I can show you something, because Xcode has a wonderful OpenGL project template, which you can just load out. Ooh. And I don't claim to understand anything that's going to happen. But if you want to, show me later. They see you know something. No? Great. If anyone knows anything, please come find me later and show me. But, so we have the GQ vertices, we have the setup for the GL, we have the update for the GL, we have the GLK view, we have the shaders, we have the compiler for the shaders, we link the program and we update, validate the program, and after all of that, we get this high-end, useful app. So actually this is a lot more interesting than it looks. The fact that it's 3D, the fact that it's moving a lot more smoother than the other videos, the fact that the light is changing as you expect it, you can see that if you actually understood what's going on and could use it properly, this could be very high-end and very useful, but I don't claim to be able to do any of that. And that is graphics on the iPhone.